What if a single lantern could mean death? In the middle of the American Civil War, someone used light to send a message no one could ignore. This is not a ghost story, it really happened. Stay with me, because once the lantern was lit, New Orleans was never the same again. The man was already dead when they found him, but someone had taken time to make sure he would be seen. His body stood upright against a rotting wooden post on the New Orleans river docks, boots sunk into the mud, head tilted forward like he was ashamed. A lantern hung from a nail just above his face. The flame was still burning, shaking in the early morning wind, lighting up his open eyes. They stared straight ahead, glassy and wide, as if he had seen his killer and recognized him. It was April '61. The Civil War had just begun. Union ships were moving closer to New Orleans. Soldiers, spies, sailors, and criminals flooded the city. And in the middle of all that noise and fear, someone was sending a message in silence. Dock workers stopped where they stood. One dropped his rope into the water. Another crossed himself and backed away. No one touched the body. Everyone noticed the same thing. The man had not been robbed. His pockets were full. His boots were still on. This was not a random killing. This was a warning. By the time the police arrived, the lantern had burned low, its light barely holding on. One officer tried to lift it down, and that was when he saw the mark on the man's neck. A deep cut, clean, done by someone who knew exactly where to slice. Before the sun fully rose, word spread along the river. Sailors whispered, stevedores spoke in low voices. By nightfall, people were already calling it something new: the lantern murder. What no one knew yet was that this was only the beginning, and by the time the lanterns stopped appearing, New Orleans would be a city afraid of the dark. But to understand how this happened, you have to go back to the city as it was before the first body ever stood beneath a burning light. New Orleans in 1861 was loud, crowded, and dangerous even on a good day. The Mississippi River was the city's heart. Ships came in from everywhere: cotton boats, military transports, smugglers hiding goods below deck. The docks never truly slept. Men worked through the night loading cargo by lantern light, their shadows stretching long across wet planks. When the Civil War broke out, everything changed fast. Louisiana was pulled into chaos. Some people supported the Confederacy, others quietly waited for the Union. Spies listened in taverns, gangs fought over control of river routes. The police force was small and overwhelmed. Many officers quit, others were sent to deal with riots and protests. The docks became a perfect place for secrets and violence. In late March 1861, a dockhand named Pierre Morel went missing. He was last seen walking toward the river after sunset, carrying his pay in a small cloth pouch. At first, no one worried. Men disappeared all the time. Some drank too much, some jumped ship, some ran from debts. 3 days later, his body washed up downstream. There was no lantern, no display, just a dead man pulled from the water. The report said he drowned. The cut on his neck was blamed on river debris. The case was closed in 1 page. 2 weeks later, another man vanished. This one was a sailor from Tennessee. He was known to ask questions, too many questions, about who controlled which docks, about which ships were really carrying weapons. He was found before dawn, sitting against a warehouse wall. A lantern burned beside him. The police told the newspapers it was probably the same kind of crime: a fight, a drunk, bad luck. But the dock workers knew better. They noticed patterns long before officials did. Each victim worked near the river. Each one had seen something. Each one died quietly.
No screams, no struggle, just a clean cut and a lantern left behind. Fear moved faster than the truth. Men started working in pairs. Some refused night shifts. Others carried knives or clubs, even though weapons were banned on the docks. Tavern owners near the river reported fewer customers after dark. The city, already tense from war, began to tighten in on itself. Union troops arrived in stages, their blue uniforms impossible to miss. They marched through streets lined with people who did not know whether to cheer or stay silent. The soldiers brought order in some places and more trouble in others. Crime did not stop. It changed, and the lanterns kept coming. By May, there were at least 4 confirmed cases. The police would never admit that number out loud, but reporters wrote about multiple incidents along the riverfront. One article mentioned a strange habit of leaving lights near the dead. Another called it the work of a madman or a secret society. That idea spread fast. Some believed it was a warning from Confederate supporters, killing men who helped the Union. Others believed it was Union intelligence removing dangerous locals. A few whispered about gangs using fear to take control of smuggling routes. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Someone knew the docks better than anyone else. Someone who could move through the darkness without being seen. One night, a young watchman named Elias Turner nearly became the next body. He was doing his rounds just after midnight when he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, careful. He turned, expecting a drunk or a rat. Instead, he saw a shape step back into shadow. Elias froze. He later told police he smelled oil and smoke, like a lantern just blown out. When he ran, he did not stop until he reached a military checkpoint. The next morning, another body was found 2 docks down from where Elias had been standing. Lantern, cutthroat, no witnesses. The city papers finally used the words everyone else already had: the Lantern Murders. Officials promised action. Extra patrols were announced. Curfews were discussed. But behind closed doors, there was a problem no one wanted to admit. There were too many people moving through New Orleans.
Too many uniforms, too many ships, too many false names. Anyone could kill and disappear. And then came the murder that changed everything. It happened during a storm. Thunder rolled over the river, and rain soaked the docks until lantern flames struggled to stay alive. Workers rushed to finish early. Soldiers took shelter. The night should have been empty. Just before dawn, a Union patrol spotted a light flickering near the end of an abandoned pier. When they approached, they found not 1 body, but 2. Both men were tied back to back. One was a dock foreman known to cooperate with Union officers. The other was a small-time smuggler rumored to work for Confederate agents. Enemies in life, joined in death. 1 lantern hung between them. That was the moment the fear turned into panic. Because this was no longer a message to one side, it was a message to everyone. And as the rain washed blood into the river, one question spread through New Orleans faster than the war itself. If the lantern killer could choose anyone, who would be next? The city waited for answers. What it got instead was silence, another dark night, and the sound of footsteps on wet wood. And somewhere along the river, a lantern was already being lit. The scream came too late. By the time the Union patrol turned the corner, the sound had already been swallowed by the river. All they found was a lantern swinging from a hook, its light rocking back and forth, casting long shadows across empty dock planks. There was blood on the boards, still fresh, still warm, but no body. That was new. Up until now, the lantern murders had followed a pattern. A man disappeared, a body appeared, a lantern burned nearby like an accusation no one could answer. But this time, the killer had changed the rules, and that terrified everyone. The missing man was Samuel Cobb, a clerk who kept cargo records for the docks. He was not a fighter, not a spy, just a thin man with ink-stained fingers who knew who shipped what and when. When soldiers searched the river, they found nothing. No trace floated up, no body washed ashore. It was as if the killer wanted New Orleans to understand something very clearly. He could take someone without leaving anything behind. Panic spread through the docks like a sickness. Men quit their jobs overnight. Some fled the city. Others begged soldiers to escort them home after dark. Lanterns, once a sign of safety, became symbols of death. People blew them out early, choosing darkness over the chance of being seen. The military command demanded results. The mayor demanded answers. The police demanded more men, more pay, more time. They got none of it. Instead, a quiet order was given. Watch the river. Watch the lanterns. Find whoever is moving where they should not be. That task fell to Henry Duval. Duval was a New Orleans man, born and raised, but he wore a Union badge now. That made him hated by some and trusted by almost no one. He knew the docks, he knew the gangs, and he knew that whoever was behind the murders was not random. This killer planned. Duval studied the victims: dockhands, sailors, clerks, a smuggler, a foreman, men on different sides of the war, different loyalties, different lives. But they shared one thing. They all knew how the river truly worked. Not the legal version, the real one. Who paid bribes? Which ships carried weapons under cotton? Which officers looked the other way? Which names were fake? These men weren't targets, Duval told his officers. They were loose ends. That idea scared him more than the murders themselves, because it meant the killer had a goal, and goals do not stop on their own. Duval began interviewing anyone who would talk. Most did not. Fear kept mouths shut, but a few whispers slipped through. Someone had been seen carrying lantern oil late at night. Someone moved between docks without a sound. Someone knew guard schedules better than the guards. One name came up again and again, always quietly: Jonah Pike. Pike was a former dock supervisor fired years earlier for violence. He knew every pier, every warehouse, every hidden path. During the early days of the war, he vanished. Some said he joined Confederate agents. Others said he worked for smugglers. No one could prove anything. Duval wanted him found. But before that could happen, another lantern appeared. This time, it was placed inside a warehouse. The body belonged to a teenage boy, a runner. He carried messages between ships and taverns. He had been stabbed, not cut. Sloppy, angry, a mistake. That detail mattered because it meant the killer was not perfect. The lantern had been placed anyway, almost rushed, as if the killer needed the symbol more than the display. Duval stood in that warehouse long after everyone else left. He stared at the lantern and felt something cold settle in his chest. The killer was escalating. When people feel cornered, they make errors, but they also become more dangerous. Union soldiers increased night patrols, dogs were brought in, curfews were enforced, but New Orleans was too big, too broken, too full of hiding places. Every alley felt like a threat, every shadow felt alive. And then, for 3 weeks, nothing happened. No lanterns, no bodies, no disappearances. People dared to breathe again. Some said the killer had fled. Others believed he had been caught quietly and executed. Tavern talk turned back to the war. Ships returned to full schedules. Lanterns slowly reappeared along the docks. Captain Duval did not relax. Killers like this did not stop. They waited. The next murder proved him right. It happened during a Union supply unloading, surrounded by soldiers. A man named Thomas Reed collapsed mid-shift. At first, everyone thought it was illness. Then they saw the blood soaking through his shirt. A small blade had been driven between his ribs. When they turned his body over, they found a lantern placed beneath his chest, already lit. The killer had struck in full view of armed men and walked away. That murder broke something inside the city. If the lantern killer could kill under military protection, then nowhere was safe. Newspapers called it an embarrassment. Officers were punished. Soldiers grew jumpy, firing at shadows. Duval reviewed Reed's records and felt his stomach drop. Reed had recently copied dock manifests, including a list of secret shipments tied to Union intelligence. That night, Duval realized the truth too late. The lantern murders were not about fear. They were about erasing information. Someone was cleaning the river of people who knew too much on both sides of the war to protect something far bigger than loyalty. Gold, weapons, or a secret so dangerous it could not be allowed to survive. Duval ordered all dock records secured. Guards were placed over clerks. But paper burns, men talk, and killers adapt. A storm rolled in 3 nights later, thick fog crawling off the river like a living thing. Visibility dropped to nothing. Bells rang. Ships stayed docked. Perfect cover. At dawn, a soldier stumbled out of the mist screaming for help. They followed him to Pier 9. There, hanging from a crane hook, was Captain Henry Duval.
His throat had been cut. A lantern burned above his head, and pinned to his coat was a piece of paper soaked in blood. On it, written in shaky ink, were 3 words: "No more records." The city would never be the same after that, and whoever lit that lantern was still free. The lantern was still burning when they cut Captain Henry Duval down. Its glass was cracked, black smoke staining the metal frame. The flame flickered but refused to die, even as soldiers crowded the pier and the crane creaked above them. Duval's boots were inches off the ground. His eyes were open, fixed on the river he had tried to protect. For the first time since the murders began, hardened men cried in public. Duval was not just another victim. He was the investigation. He was the one man who believed the killings meant something more than fear, and now he was gone. Pinned to his coat were the words that froze every officer who read them: "No more records." That message spread through New Orleans faster than cannon fire. By sunrise, dock offices were sealed, clerks were questioned, some were arrested, others vanished before they could be found. Papers were burned by frightened men trying to save themselves. In taverns, people whispered that the killer was no longer hiding, he was winning. Union command demanded order. Extra troops flooded the riverfront. Searchlights were installed. Night patrols doubled. But the docks were quieter than ever, and that silence felt wrong. No shouts, no laughter, just water moving against wood. That was when the next lantern appeared. Not on the docks, inside the records office. A junior clerk named Matthew Rios had stayed late, ordered to copy manifests before they could be moved. At dawn, a guard opened the door and found him slumped over the desk. His throat was cut so deeply his head nearly fell forward. The lantern sat beside the papers. All the papers were gone. That was the moment Union officers understood the truth they had been avoiding. This was not madness. This was not random violence. This was a purge. Someone was removing every person who knew the truth about something moving through New Orleans under cover of war. Not just weapons, not just gold, something bigger. A secret shipment tied to both sides. As panic rose, an old river pilot finally spoke. He was drunk, shaken, half blind, but he had sailed the Mississippi for 40 years, and he remembered things others wanted forgotten. He told officers about a night in early 1861, before the first lantern ever burned. A ship arrived without papers, no flag, no name. Its cargo was unloaded fast and hidden across multiple docks. Guards were paid in cash, records were altered, and everyone involved was warned, forget what you saw. According to the pilot, the shipment was not meant to be found by the Union or the Confederacy. It belonged to private men, powerful men, men who would kill to keep it buried. The pilot named one dock supervisor who organized the unloading, Jonah Pike. The name came back like a ghost. Pike had vanished at the start of the war, but suddenly his shadow was everywhere. His old routes matched the murder sites. His former workers were among the dead. His name appeared on missing records that Duval had tried to protect. Soldiers searched Pike's old home. It was empty, but beneath the floorboards, they found lantern oil, rope, and a knife carefully cleaned, still warm. That meant only one thing. Jonah Pike was alive and close. The city locked down. Curfews were enforced at gunpoint. Anyone carrying a lantern after dark was questioned. The river was blocked, ships were inspected, but fear makes people slappy. On the fourth night after Duval's death, a young soldier on patrol noticed a light moving against the fog, low to the ground, slipping between warehouses. He followed it alone. That was his mistake. When others reached him, they found him bleeding but alive. His throat was cut, but shallow, a warning, not a kill. In his shaking hand was a scrap of paper torn from a dock ledger. Written on it was a single word, last. That night, no one slept, because everyone knew what it meant. One final lantern was coming.
Just before dawn, bells rang across the riverfront. Not alarm bells, ship bells. Every dock, every pier, every moored vessel rang at once, pulled by unseen hands. Soldiers ran in every direction, confused, weapons raised. Smoke rose from somewhere upriver. Then they saw it. At the center of the docks, on the oldest pier in New Orleans, stood a single figure, a man holding a lantern. He did not run. He did not hide. As soldiers closed in, the man placed the lantern on the ground and stepped back. When the light hit his face, some swore they recognized him. Others said they didn't want to. Gunshots rang out. When the smoke cleared, the man was gone. No body, no blood. Only the lantern remained, sitting beside a crate pulled from the water. Inside the crate were iron bars stamped with foreign marks. Gold, enough to buy loyalty, enough to fund a private war, enough to explain every murder. But Jonah Pike was never found. No trial followed, no confession. The gold disappeared into military hands, and the war swallowed the truth like it swallowed so many men. Officially, the lantern murders were blamed on wartime crime and chaos. Files were sealed, names were lost, families were left with questions that never healed. But dock workers told another story. They said that long after the war ended, sometimes on foggy nights, a single lantern could still be seen moving along the river, and if you followed it, you never came back. In the next chapter, we follow the evidence that survived the cover-up and the witness who claimed to see the lantern killer face to face. The witness began screaming before anyone asked him a question. He was dragged into the guardhouse just after sunrise, clothes soaked, hands shaking so badly 2 soldiers had to hold him steady. His name was Luis Calder, a night ferryman,
one of the few men who still worked the river alone after dark. "I saw him," Luis kept saying. "I saw his face. God help me, I saw his face." The room went silent. For weeks, the lantern killer had been a shadow, a pattern, a fear. No one had ever claimed to see him clearly and live. Captain Duval had come closest, and now Duval was dead. Luis Calder was alive. That alone made him dangerous. Union officers shut the door and barred it. No reporters, no civilians, just lantern light and fear hanging thick in the air. When Luis finally calmed enough to speak, his voice dropped to a whisper. He said it happened on the old pier, the same one where the gold crate was found. He had been guiding a small ferry through the fog when he noticed a lantern moving against the current, steady and slow, like someone walking on water. At first, he thought it was a signal. Smugglers used lanterns all the time, but this light did not flicker, it did not wave, it watched. Luis tied his boat and stepped onto the pier. That was when the figure turned. "The light hit his face," Luis said, and he smiled. Not a wild smile, not a mad one, a calm smile. Luis said the man was older than he expected, gray in his beard, lines around his eyes, a man who looked like he belonged on the docks, like he had always been there. "The lantern wasn't for me," Luis whispered. "It was for the river." Then the man spoke. One sentence. "You should have stayed gone." Luis ran. He felt the blade brush his neck, but not cut deep. He fell into the water and let the river take him until he reached a patrol point. When officers pressed him for the man's name, Luis hesitated. Then he said it. Jonah Pike. The room felt smaller after that. Union command faced a problem they could not solve with rifles or arrests. Jonah Pike was no longer just a suspect. He was a symbol of everything the war had made possible. Hidden power, hidden money, men operating outside both sides. And worst of all, Pike knew too much. Official orders came down quietly. The Lantern murders investigation was to end. The gold would be seized and redistributed. Records would be rewritten. Witness statements would be reduced to rumors. Jonah Pike would be listed as presumed dead. Luis Calder was told to leave New Orleans. He refused. 2 days later, his ferry was found drifting empty. No body, no blood, just a lantern left hanging from the mast. After that, the river went quiet in a way that frightened even the soldiers. No more lanterns appeared, no more bodies were staged. The docks slowly returned to work, ships moved, cargo flowed. War swallowed attention again. Officially, the Lantern murders ended in late 1861.
But endings are not the same as truths. Years later, after the war was over and the uniforms had changed, dock workers noticed something strange. Old men began disappearing. Men who had worked the docks during that single winter. Men who had signed papers, taken bribes, kept secrets. Each death was ruled natural, until one night in 1869, a watchman found a lantern burning on the riverbank. No body, just a lantern. And carved into the wooden post beside it were 4 words, cut deep and slow. The river remembers. That lantern burned until morning. Then it went out, and it was never lit again. The city moved on, but New Orleans never truly forgot, because some crimes do not want justice. They want silence, and sometimes silence is the most terrifying ending of all. The last lantern should not have existed. 8 years had passed since the Winter of Blood. The Civil War was over. New Orleans had changed hands, flags, and faces. The docks were busy again, loud with new workers who did not know the old stories. Men laughed at night. Lanterns were just lanterns again. That is why the watchman froze when he saw the light. It was just after midnight in the summer of 1869. The river was calm, no fog, no storm, no reason for fear. The watchman was young, barely 20, too new to remember the murders. He thought the lantern meant someone needed help. He walked closer. The lantern sat alone on the riverbank, hanging from a wooden post driven deep into the mud. The flame was steady, bright, clean, too clean. There were no footprints around it, no boat marks in the water. And then he saw the words carved into the post. "The river remembers." The watchman ran. By morning, soldiers had gathered. Officers inspected the site. Reporters arrived, hungry for a story that sounded like a ghost. The lantern was taken away. The post was pulled up and burned. Official statements were released within hours. A prank, a coincidence, no connection to the past. But the older dock workers would not go near the river that night. They remembered. They remembered men who vanished. They remembered lanterns burning where no light should be. They remembered Captain Duval hanging from a crane, eyes open, warning no one could hear. And some of them remembered Jonah Pike. One of those men was Auguste Leblanc, a former tallyman who had survived by keeping his mouth shut. He was old now, sick. The war had taken his sons, and the river had taken his courage. But when he heard about the lantern, something inside him broke. That night, Auguste wrote everything down. Names, dates, ship routes, bribes, the secret shipment that arrived without papers in early 1861, the gold that did not belong to any nation, the private men who paid Jonah Pike to make problems disappear. He wrote until his hands shook. At dawn, he sealed the papers in oilcloth and walked to the river. No one knows exactly what Auguste planned to do. Some say he meant to turn the papers over to the authorities. Others believe he planned to sink them, to finally let the river take the truth with him. Auguste never came home. 3 days later, fishermen found his hat near the old pier. No body was recovered. No lantern was found. And that was almost worse, because it meant the rules had changed again. In the years that followed, small pieces of the story surfaced in strange ways. A burned ledger discovered in a courthouse basement, a soldier's letter mentioning dock cleanings, a priest's journal describing confessions he was ordered to forget. Each fragment hinted at the same thing. Jonah Pike had not been acting alone. He was a tool, a sharp one, a willing one, but still a tool used by men whose names never appeared in reports. Men who survived the war richer than they entered it. Men who understood that the river was not just water, it was a grave. Historians would later argue about the lantern murders. Some called them exaggerated. Others claimed they were just wartime crime mixed with fear. A few insisted Jonah Pike never existed at all. But the dock workers told their children a different story. They said Pike loved the river more than money, that he hated records because records were lies written by powerful men, and that the lantern was never meant to scare the city. It was meant to mark the truth. Each lantern meant someone had crossed the line, someone had sold silence, someone had tried to erase the river's memory. And when the river was done being used, Pike made sure it was paid back. The last known mention of a lantern came from a diary written in 1872 by a riverboat cook. He wrote about seeing a single light far down the bank, standing where no man stood. He wrote that the light faded as the boat passed, like it had finished its work. After that, the trail went cold forever. No more lanterns, no more warnings, no more messages carved into wood. Just water moving south. Today, the docks look different. Steel replaced wood, electric lights replaced flame. The river still flows, carrying everything away. Most people walk past without thinking twice. But sometimes, when the night is quiet and the air smells like oil and smoke, old families swear they see something flicker near the water's edge. A steady light, a watching light.
And for a moment, New Orleans remembers what it tried so hard to forget. Because some crimes do not end with arrests. Some stories do not need a killer to be caught. They only need the truth to survive. And the river never forgets. If this story chilled you, there are many more buried in history. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next true crime that time tried to erase. These stories only survive if we keep telling them. Turn on notifications. The next one is darker than this.